So, in 1997, the Tucker Center, in partnership with the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports in the Clinton administration, embarked on the first ever partnership or collaboration where we brought in the very best scholars in the country, an exercise physiologist, a sports psychologist, a sports sociologist, and we said, tell us what is the very best, cutting-edge, most important research on how sport and physical activity impact girls 18 and under, as well as their families and communities. And so we developed this groundbreaking report that in many ways became the Bible, not only to scholars, but to teachers, to administrators, to policymakers, to parents, and to girls themselves. And it was enormously successful, and it really put the Tucker Center and the University of Minnesota on the map. But more importantly, it really truly did make a difference in the lives of girls and women, because people were designing programs for girls and thinking about the impact of sport and physical activity, both good and bad, based upon not what they thought, but based on scientific evidence by the very best scholars in the world. So over the last few years, those people around the world who said this is our Bible, but it's also 10 years old, and we really want to know what's the latest research and what's happened in these last 10 years. And so for the last 2 years, the Tucker Center has worked very diligently once again to bring back the very best scholars in the country in their respective academic fields and say, here's the 10-year update. Here's what we now know 10 years later, and we hope that, and we actually strongly believe, that this report will have the same kind of impact that the original report had, which is to help parents, teachers, scholars, educators, policymakers use evidence-based research when they're making their decisions about how to create sports programs for young girls and to study the kind of impact that sport has in their lives. I think one of the most important take-home messages in this report, as in our original report, is that this country needs to continue to develop a national commitment to making sure that girls all over this country, from different economic backgrounds, from different social and ethnic backgrounds, and whether you live in an urban center, whether you live in a rural community, that this country needs to make the same kind of commitment to girls' involvement in sport and physical activity as we've always made for young boys. Because what we know in terms of the health benefits of participation, instilling a lifelong respect and commitment to being engaged fully, that we know that what happens to young girls through their involvement in sport and physical activity is the same thing that happens to young boys. They do better in school, they become better citizens, and they pay back to themselves, to their families, and their communities tenfold. And so what we know is that sport allows girls to reach their full potential both on and off the court. And we learned it in '97, and it comes through even louder in 2007.
Okay, great. Impact the most.
Well, I think just like with the first report, we want it to have a multifaceted impact. We want certainly the girls to know all about this, and I can't tell you the times I've gotten emails or letters or phone calls from young girls saying, I'm doing a high school report, and this Tucker Center report made all the difference in the world for me, or could you send me even more resources? So it's a way for people to find out more about the Tucker Center, to come to the University of Minnesota and learn even more about the research that we're doing here. But I also want people at the national level who can make a real difference, who can invest resources in girls and their involvement in physical activity, in local school boards, in parents, teachers, policymakers. This is a multifaceted issue, problem, challenge, opportunity, and therefore we want everybody on board to pay attention and to invest in one of this country's most important assets, and that's young girls. I think it's off the scale. It is immeasurable in terms of getting young girls involved in sport and physical activity and making sure that they have fun and that they develop a lifelong commitment to be involved. Because as we all know, and we've known this about young boys and men forever, being involved in sport and physical activity isn't just about what happens to you in terms of the health dimensions, although I would never, ever, ever want to underestimate that. We know that we have a national epidemic around issues such as childhood obesity, diabetes, And sport and physical activity can be a direct pathway into addressing those kinds of issues. But the other thing that we know about involvement in sport and physical activity for girls as well as boys is that it develops self-esteem, that it develops young citizens who have respect for authority, who know about discipline, who know what it means to lose but to come back and fight another day. And these young girls grow up to be exactly the kind of citizens we want in this country because they will give back and they will pass it on 1,000 times over.